Okay, welcome to our week 3 show. I guess our second kind of, informal, uh, more freeform show of the year. Today we have Alex Feigenbaum and Michael Diaz. Everyone knows Michael Diaz wrote a bunch of trade grade recaps after uh, seasons a while ago for a bunch of years that I'll eventually try to recover and put up so we could see those. And Alex did give us a nice quick trade value summary, I think, earlier this year. So should be interesting to see what their views are on I guess the trades and transactions of this season so far. There haven't been a lot, but yeah, so Mike and Alex, feel free to just cover the ones that you find interesting. Then you can take it away.
Oh, they're all interesting, Dustin. Can't can't get enough. Thank you for having me today. Yeah.
Do you guys see the I guess the trade log on the stream?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you guys can just start from the top and I'll just scroll down as you go. Yeah, so Diaz, if you want to start, just I guess we could start with the first trade that kicked off the off season officially.
Okay. So the great thing about these is, the preseason trades. You Now we know who the players are who were involved in the draft picks, and we've been able to see some of them. I believe that the player here the pick that Orange County traded to LIC became, or sorry, so this is very interesting because LIC received, Orange County received round two, pick five. Do we all know who that was?
Mims or Rice, one of them.
It was Tank
Oh,
Bigsby,
Tank Bigsby.
and LIC was able to trade from a position of surplus because they actually had the pick right after Tank Bigsby. Do we know who that was? Yes. Yeah. So, uh, you know, off the bat, this trade, was very the decision that Duho made on how to use that pick was very pivotal in the outcome of this deal. Obviously, Von Achan looks like a great pick right now, and Tank Bigsby hasn't done as much. Um, but besides that, Alex, what do you think about the trade of Josh Allen at this point in the offseason and the value of the $70 tag? Do you feel like this was a warranted return? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it allows LIC to establish a strategy in the draft, to play from a position of power, to understand where they want to use their money in the draft, and yeah, frankly, at the time, I felt that they didn't really give up that much. Again, obviously, this changes if OC hits a home run with that rookie pick, which is to be seen. But personally, I don't. Tyler Lockett is generally undervalued for what he brings to the table, but I I don't know if he's someone you really want to rely on, or want to. He never felt like an exciting keeper to me. So I
Hmm.
was very favorable towards Warren in this deal.
what are the odds Lockett is part of your next year, which feels like the year to be looking
Yeah.
at. You know, I think maybe I don't know what the market for Allen was like. I mean, I don't think I would have been offering too much there, but maybe looking for a keeper who felt more like a 2 year bet than a 1 year bet. It might have been
Yeah.
more of a cohesive strategy, but especially when we get into sort of trading Pollard later. Um,
And I think that plays to a big point here where there's a question of when you want to trade an asset. And I think that we've seen in the past historically, if you have a player who's arguably the top quarterback in fantasy, maybe one of the top three or four, if you trade him in October or November, you're going to have a lot more information about the pieces that you're getting back. You're going to have a lot more information about the position your team is in, and you're theoretically you've enjoyed the value that he already got for you. Maybe you got some wins out of it. Maybe you got some Hamiltons and put some money in your pocket. I think that what we'll likely see if in the unlikely scenario a player of this caliber is traded at the deadline is that the team go the return is going to be a lot more than what we see Duho got in August.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that's a great point. It's tricky, but it's tricky also because I think Duho wasn't in a position where he wanted to keep Allen himself, so he wound up in this weird spot where it's like if you don't trade him now and you don't keep him because you want to keep your draft strategy open to try to get people who are more,
Yeah,
more part of your future plans or whatever, you end up then you end up letting the asset go for free, which is obviously not where you want to be keeping
I
it.
will also say, yes, in theory, Allen looks like he would be able to easily get more than Lockett and this pick at the deadline, but at $70, he wouldn't be the most flexible piece to fit in. And if he was, slightly underperforming from like a top two or three quarterback level to, a top 5 or 6 quarterback level, he'd pretty much be, I think, really hard to move at that price tag and get back keepers. So while I do think like most likely if you're out of it at the trade deadline and you trade Josh Allen, you'll probably get something back better than Lockett and a pick in the second round. It's not as guaranteed as it seems because the salary won't be the most flexible, and that means that if he underperforms even a little bit, then all of a sudden like none of the contending teams can justify fitting in a quarterback that's making $70 into their um, salary sheet if he's not one of the top like one or two performing quarterbacks. So that's probably the only wrinkle that I would like to add to that trade. Yeah.
yeah, great point. All right, so we can move on. I think
Yeah, I think
same day,
the next
March.
one. I
Yeah,
think
yeah. Go ahead.
this is funny trade to look at now. This next one, which is New England receives Madison and Mars receives two fab, round two pick next year, and a top three protected round one swap next year. Um, Fortunately, I think as of now, doesn't seem like the round one swap will necessarily be a factor, but I guess we'll see. I guess you never. I guess round three. Well, I guess the thing is you get a low pick if you finish at the like you get the number one pick if you finish at the top of the consolation bracket. Who knows?
Still way too early for that to be
Yeah.
leaning one way or another. Yeah.
I think obviously Madison not delivering too much just yet. Had a better game last week, fortunately, but I think if I think this is looking pretty good return for Madison so far.
Yeah, and what you brought up last time. This is not a player that John had any plans to keep. So
Mm-hmm.
it would have been he got a lot more than the nothing that he would have gotten if he just threw Madison back
For sure,
into the
for
pool.
sure. I don't think
So I think he did very well for himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a nice trade for Madison. I get where New England's coming from. I think they were just looking. They really went for it last year, and they wound up trading away some assets. And I think they came into the off season like trying to scoop up players who felt like they were on good price tags. I think Madison at $9 is a really good price for a guy who's getting 20 touches a game and theoretically an offense that scores a decent amount, but just hasn't he just hasn't really deliver yet.
It's the since the term dead zone running back has was coined, the landscape has changed a lot. A lot of running backs are pushed down the board in general because there aren't as many teams that want to have a bell cow, and wide
Mm-hmm.
receiver. The league is passing more, so wide receivers score more. But to me, Madison really, it's in hindsight, it's obvious, but it's the classic trap of, oh, he has volume, it's a good offense, even though all of the stats that we've seen, from him show that he's kind of just a guy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, I would have made the same mistake if he was on the board and we were bidding. I would have bid maybe $20 on him. So I understand the value, but yeah, in hindsight, it's always hard to say when you're giving up someone who isn't on that upper echelon, of tier.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, Madison is firmly in that weird dead zone running back world. Even more, maybe even more so than we thought when the season started.
Yeah, so I think John is in a pretty much no lose situation because, like we said, he wasn't gonna keep Madison really. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he was even considering it. So getting back, you know, multiple, draft capital options is definitely a pretty good return. Especially if you look at what I think players that were lesser than Madison in terms of value, but like similarly, like some teams that weren't planning on keeping some of their lower end guys. I think they probably got back significantly less than this. So definitely a win for Mars, but I will say the schedule does turn around for Madison, I think, in terms of run defenses faced. So I don't think, it definitely doesn't look great now, but it's definitely not a done story yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once the bye week start and everything, like, a guy that's just getting volume is just gonna seem like even more valuable, even if he's, getting like 2 yards per carry and like a chance at a touchdown. Like that'll still be worth more than it seems in the first like 3 weeks where,
For
everybody's
sure.
closer to full
Yeah.
strength and stuff. So yeah, I
Especially
mean,
same
yeah,
volume at that point.
that's true. That is also something that could swing really
Yeah.
against New England, and those picks could be, something pretty valuable, especially because I did caution them, but the first round rookies having the new contracts, it even a fourth overall pick could be a major drop off in talent, and it could mean a lot if you have him locked into what the new contracts are supposed to be looking like. So
Yeah, I think this was also a nice timing for Mars that they did this trade pretty early, if I'm
mhm
remembering right,
mhm
in the off season, and
mhm
I think that was smart because I feel like the market sort of became clear that like lower tier keepers just people were just not interested.
mhm you I think try to move one later in
I
this
did
off
move
season,
like
so
several.
yeah, so we'll eventually get to that.
Yeah. All right, I think we can go to the next one, which is just a draft pick swap.
Mhm.
So this next one, I think this was
Roshan Johnson, I believe.
Roshan. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that real interesting prospect right now.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this seems like a fair-ish price. Like 8 fab is pretty good. I think
Mhm.
the third round picks wound up going for like 1 fab, so getting 8 here is pretty solid, especially if there wasn't someone that you were looking at particularly closely.
Mhm.
These second round picks are just it's such a right? It's like half the time they end up cut by the time you start the season,
Yep.
half the time you hit someone big. So
Mhm.
um, I think Roshan right now looking pretty good. I would say not for this year, but for next year,
Mhm.
if the Bears offense can somehow turn into something that you want
Well, that
fantasy exposure to.
if the Bears offense turns into something, what is it? But the last
Yeah,
time it was something was what, 15 years ago?
that's a fair point, fair counterpoint.
Jay Cutler's not walking through those doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Dustin did well to get that. Obviously, John wanted Roshan Johnson.
Hmm.
There was hype around him. Obviously, in hindsight, we can see that there were probably at least two better picks that he could have made at that point. How it looks right now.
I will say he
Yeah,
offered this the night before we knew what any of that second round played out like. And I didn't personally think this draft was especially deep, so I didn't mind trading out of this, and like if the right guy fell, like we thought we could trade back into the second round for, a cheaper amount than that. So, this was a deal that was made the night before and not necessarily something where Mars or John had a specific target in mind. He just, I think, really wanted to get a piece of the second round because I don't think he had
yeah,
another pick. So, yeah, I mean, I don't, I think 8 fab was probably pretty fair. I think it's one of the higher straight fab amounts for a second round pick that we've seen historically, but the value of a draft pick is kind of always changing, and uh, kind of teams are adjusting to what it's worth to them. So that's just a little bit of context, I think. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we'll have to see if Roshan's talent can overcome the situation in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Should we go next? Uh, could you scroll down a little on this
Yeah.
page?
Sorry.
Okay. Um,
Is the scroll working, Dustin? It looks the same here from where we're looking.
yeah.
No,
All
is
right,
it
there
not?
you go.
Okay. Yeah.
There
Sorry. It's like
There
on a
you go.
delay. Yep.
Oh yeah, of course the delay.
Uh, all right. Next one is LIC received pick 6, round 2 pick 6 in this year's draft, and Sandy Pines get LIC's round 2 pick for next year. So just a straight swap, middle second round for unknown second round. And that was the pick that became a champ. So that one game into his career is looking like we've got the greatest fantasy player in the history.
Yeah, I mean he's on pace to score what 3,000 points this year.
3,000 points, yeah, yeah, like 35 touchdowns. Um, so it's a home run, really, a home run right there. We can just judge that as a. I think Achan was actually dropping. He was one of the guys. I had the next pick here. I had 2-7, and so I was Achan was the guy who I wanted in that pick, and then he dropped. I actually was thinking of trading with someone here. I think I was thinking of trading for the 2-3 maybe to get Achan, and then the price just didn't really work out. Uh, so obviously, in hindsight, maybe should have gone for it, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, I had HN actually pretty high on my board,
Mm-hmm.
but I got scared off because it just seemed like a trap situation of he's a third round running back. He's small. The team didn't like none of the Dolphins running backs were reliable last year, despite having a great offense. So I thought, oh, this team isn't gonna, this team just throws. Of course, why wouldn't they with the weapons that
Right.
they have? Um, well, I'm self-soothing, but I do think that Achan looks as good today as probably he will ever look. Um, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But Warren has a great team, so that future pick is probably not going to be as good as Tuesday. So for that alone, it was a good move from Warren.
Just some context on Achan. This was before Dalvin Cook signed with the Jets, so I think Cook was somewhat
Yeah.
mentioned as a potential signing for Miami, and they've been in Jonathan Taylor talks this whole time.
And
And
Wilson also was supposed
yeah,
to be.
Wilson wasn't hurt at that point, and Achan, he is one of the lightest, relevant running backs probably in the NFL right now. So while there are always outliers, there was a decent reason to, I guess, have some concern back then. And of course, this trade was made before. I think. Um, Actually, I'm not sure. Do you remember if you made this trade after it got to your pick, or did you kind of make it you think before you knew what was available?
No, I think we were definitely on the clock.
Okay,
We
okay,
talked a
yeah,
lot
okay,
about, yeah.
right. So,
We talked about Achan and we talked about Laporta, I think.
hmm
And we said, well, let's just trade it. Yeah, it was a very stressful time.
yeah, you came into the second round this year with three picks, right? The three second round picks,
Yeah, yeah,
and you only ended up making the uh Charbonnet one. Did you?
yeah.
Right, yeah. So I did think you would keep one of the other picks. I was surprised that you traded out of both. But I think your strategy is to like, I mean, yeah, it is pretty often that second round picks just end up being, dead cap like fairly early on, and that can limit your flexibility in the draft, auction draft as well. So I think it's definitely more in line with your strategy to not take on those many guys. But yeah, I was kind of curious to see how you would handle those three picks, and I think uh, pretty much like in line with I guess your tendencies over the last couple years.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, but I don't hate it. Like I get the thinking. If you have a preference and a strategy in auction draft that fits that better, that's great. Um, you basically just punted to the next year on this trade. And that this one is the sixth pick in the second round, but there's the chance that this could have been the first or it doesn't look that likely, but the first or the second overall pick of the second round next year, and you would have come out decent amount ahead. And if you didn't love anyone at that pick, I don't I don't hate the idea of a trade here.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and then the next trade right after is basically also your trade, right? So we can just go right to that one. Do you
Yeah, Maris
remember
Johnny.
yeah, what guy was available at 2-8? Like, were you considering making this pick, or
We would have drafted Laporta.
mm-hmm.
But I just, yeah, I didn't yeah, I felt like it was making a mistake to try and to spend $4 on a rookie tight end
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when I could spend $1 on a tight end in the draft. So obviously Laporta's great, but it's just, yeah, it's always the honestly the change from $2 to $4. Really, you're committing. It's a significant commitment. That's money that you can't spend. That's a roster spot that you can't use. And money you can't spend in the draft. And if you hit, you hit. But you have to kind of rely on that guy. And if you have a bunch of rookies on your bench, then you have a bunch of guys who you don't know if you can count on them for the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, clogging up your spots because you don't want to drop them right away and like commit to the dead cap hit. But then like there's a limit to how long you can wait on certain guys. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I understand the thinking, and raising the salaries to four definitely probably factored into that. And I think this year is kind of an outlier actually, like in how I guess promising or productive these second round rookies have been so far at least. I think in previous years there's the second round is littered with guys that are complete misses, or guys that aren't interesting already by this point of the season. So yeah, I think it's a lot of hindsight to say like, oh, like you should have like kept those picks and stuff. So
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Next we have Great Kills receives the first pick in the comp round, which became Tajay Spears, and LIC got pick 3 and $2 fab. I think LIC used that pick on Musgrave.
I think so, yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yep, I have it open. Uh, yeah, I mean, they're both actually interesting looking players right now. So I like the outcome. Um, feels like, I mean, it feels very, this is one of these draft trades. Like, I'm sure they were confident Musgrave was still going to be there, probably who they wanted anyway. Pick up two fab,
Mm-hmm.
doing that anyway. And then for you, you get to lock in the guy you want, who's nice upside right now. I think Spears looks like a nice upside guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's out touching Henry, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's out snapping him in like the last 2 games, mostly because he plays all the third downs and yeah. But
And he's down a lot.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, age is always it's always gonna hit for even the best running backs. So, Spears was a guy that we were thinking about trading up late in the second round for if you know, we thought the right trade would present itself, but we decided to try to hold off till the compensation round because it is $1 cheaper. It doesn't seem like that much, but it could make a slight difference in auction and stuff. So, as soon as he got to the first pick, we were interested in moving up for that pick in the compensation round. And yeah, I think it was a pretty fair price to pay. We gave, you know, a pick 2 picks later, and 2 fab is pretty painless to just, make a move up since we got 8 earlier um, from Mars. So, yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward trade. I'm sure LIC was probably more looking towards Musgrave anyway because they did get H-Han in the first or in the second. So, yeah, pretty straightforward trade, I think. It might look more impact or like there might be more of an opinion to go either way once Spears and Musgrave kind of play out a bit more, but on paper this is I think as fair of a
Yeah,
draft pick
it's
trade as
very, very
possible.
reasonable price. Two
Yeah.
fab for guaranteeing you get the guy you want. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which feels right. Yeah, we can probably speed run these next couple.
Mm-hmm. Just you want to name like
Sure.
which players these guys turned into?
Yeah, good
Yeah.
call. So the next trade Mars got round 3, pick 2, which is Zach Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Who I think is still on his roster, but is obviously not
Yeah, he's
doing
not
much.
doing much right
Right
now.
idea,
He's on,
wrong LA running back. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, that's right. That's right. He's on the practice squad, so
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we'll see if that lasts the season
Mm-hmm.
or not.
Yeah.
And then Yonkers got the pick 6, round 3, pick 6, and 1 fab, so traded down 4 spots for 1 fab.
Mm-hmm.
And he took 3-6 is Josh Downs, which
Mm.
looking like some. Josh Downs is actually a guy who I thought was going to be on the waivers this week. I was like, oh, that's a guy I'll pick up,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was not.
Yep.
He's not on the waivers, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's a I think really solid guy to have for 2 in a team that maybe is going to have a nice looking offense
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
Mm-hmm. And I don't hate the idea for Mars. I think Evans isn't the worst guy to take a swing on because as we saw with Cam
Yeah,
Akers,
there is
he
certain
yeah,
right,
yeah,
especially that
he yeah,
that
he
situation. Yeah,
Akers fell completely out of favor, and nobody knew if Kyron was gonna step up and be a guy, or if he was just like another rotational guy that wouldn't get that chance. So don't mind that. Round 3, pick 4 for 1 fab. Who did that end up
yeah.
being? Jalen.
That ends up being Jalen Hyatt.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I mean we haven't seen really anything from
another
that.
practice squad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my thinking here was just I've already drafted 3 players. I'm keeping 5 players. I
Yeah.
don't need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just too many people on my roster
Mm-hmm.
already.
Mm-hmm. Don't want to clog too much for sure.
Yeah, took anything at that point. And that's the end of the draft day trades, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We
Right,
discussed
and
the
then
poach.
nicely timed post keeper lock. No, this was pre keeper. Was this pre keeper
This
lock?
one was pre-keeper lock.
Pre keeper lock. That's right,
Yeah.
pre keeper lock. Yeah, I mean, I think that was a good move at the time. He did the 2 years. I think I would have probably matched this at 1 year, and
Mm-hmm.
since he did the 2
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
it was just it was too much of a weight on the being able to keep all the other people.
Right. Right. I think so. Yeah. I think the 2 years was probably the difference. Mars would have been
That's
tempted
a
to
smart
just
move.
yeah, Mars would have been tempted to just match, I think, if it was just 1 year, so the 2 years did probably just push it over. I mean,
But just 1 year off that Fields contract.
right. Yeah, I mean, incomplete so far. I don't think Sky Moore has, established himself as being worth this poach yet.
No,
But I don't think it's shaken out to the point where you have a definitive answer on that. So
right.
I think yeah, OC was kind of a little bit short on great keeper candidates, so it was a you know irritation move as well as something that's not huge risk for them relative to some other teams that felt like this was like their window for sure. Like he I think they had the idea that if things do turn out really well for them and they contend, that's awesome, obviously. But I think they knew that they had to take some risks, and it likely would be kind of a reloading year of some sort, unless things played out really well. So, in that context, I think this is a fine poach.
Yeah, totally agree. One of these KC receivers is going to
Right,
pan out.
right.
Going to be like, 2,000 yard a year guy.
Yeah, yeah. The next Tyreek
Just keep
is,
waiting until it happens. Exactly. There's some one of these guys. It's
yeah.
going to happen.
There's only Tyreek. There's no next Tyreek.
That might really be just the answer, but it's so weird that in an offense this strong and like, a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback that's so not nearing the end of his career, you figure like at some point something has to emerge uh, alongside Mahomes, especially with Kelsey also getting old. But yeah, I mean, we haven't seen anything resembling consistency in
Yeah,
that.
no.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe Mahomes is just so good that he'll literally just choose who to make look good per game, and you'll never be able to trust anyone after Kelsey. But I do understand why teams are taking swings on that, because I think if you do luck into like something that is long term, it's definitely like a foundational piece. But yeah, I mean, Diaz might be right. There just might not be another Tyreek or another Kelsey. It might just be that Kelsey and Tyreek are just really good, and it has nothing to do with Mahomes. And Mahomes is good in his own way, where if he doesn't have a Kelsey or a Tyreek, it'll just be a rotating cast of like 11 guys with a complete reception in a game, and like yeah, like what are you gonna trust there? So yeah, I mean, I get both sides of that argument. I think the next trade is actually one of the more interesting ones for sure too.
Yeah, totally. So the next one is New England receives Christian Watson and Jahan Dotson, and Sandy Pines receives AJ Brown, who was tagged and traded, and three fab. And the Brown tag came in at 45. This was pre-auction, so
Hmm.
45 pre-auction. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's
I
a
guess
really interesting one here. I think.
neither side has gotten really like great returns out of either
Right,
side so
right.
far. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about it in like in
Sort of at the time, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
pre hindsight
Hmm.
way, you kind of I think this to me looks like a sort of a stronger return than what Josh Allen got. I think is AJ Brown at 45 is maybe slightly better deal than Josh Allen at 70, but in the same area, I think of like a little less than they would go for an auction, but not significantly so. And it locks up what you want as a on your in your plan for the season, and gives you more space to use keeper since it's a tag player. So that's also a nice value. But I think the sort of Watson Dotson is a stronger return than like Lockett and the round two pick five. Uh, so I like kind of what New England got here, and I like that New England sort of looking to start to build out more keepers since they just didn't have a lot of options, and getting two players that they could keep for multiple years really let them use this year to build something. Uh, so I don't know. Yeah, it's a
I
really
think it's
nice
a great
trade.
return.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice return. Uh,
I'll tell you, when I saw the trade 1 week later, the Tony Pollard trade, I said, "Excuse me, I just gave up what to get AJ Brown, and that was what Tony
mm-hmm,
Pollard cost."
mm-hmm.
Now, maybe everyone else knew that Eric Bieniemy was bringing an offense that doesn't target wide receivers to Washington, so that Jahan Dotson would disappear, and maybe everybody knew that Christian Watson was going to, pull his hamstring. These players haven't been able to contribute much for Wonku yet. But I think they're both great talents, and he locked them in. So we're gonna know 1 or 2 years down the road whether these guys are still performing for his team and presenting value, or whether he ended up having to cut them because they didn't take the next step. But I think they're both extremely talented.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think and Watson, we'll see. Like I think Love has looked pretty decent, so it's not a bad opportunity. Uh,
Yeah, we'll see him tonight.
yeah, for sure. Any thoughts, Dustin, on this one?
No, I mean, yeah, I will say, Watson, like, I think his ceiling is like super, super high, but he probably was a little bit, risky and like polarizing of a keeper just because QB change is always going to be a little bit hard to predict. He isn't super, cheap, relative to
Right. Yeah.
some of the other wide receiver keepers. So if he ends up busting somehow, it would actually kind of be a pretty negative effect on like future cap and stuff. Um, and he did miss like half of last season with an injury. I don't think you could have projected him to like stay injury prone, but like I'm just saying we didn't see a ton from him last year, even though what we did see was amazing and then very tantalizing to keep as a long-term piece. But yeah, like coming into the season, I thought the Dotson thing was a lot more low risk, and I could have seen it turning out better than it has so far. But yeah, I mean, I thought New England did pretty well. And I thought this was a good move for Sandy Pines too, because they did consolidate a little bit. I think AJ Brown, um, on a tag at slightly below what I think market value would have been is good to make use of that franchise tag spot, and they definitely knew that they were going to have the pieces to contend this year. So AJ Brown definitely less of a long term asset than Watson or Dotson, obviously, but it made a lot of sense for what they were gearing up to do with Bijan opportunity. A lot they had a really good setup to consider themselves contenders going into the season. So it was a trade that I thought made sense for both teams. Yeah, and I don't think there were a lot of other options for to find this kind of asset. I don't think there was a different wide receiver that you could tag that would be as cheap as Brown. Nor could New England really find anybody with the type of upside that Watson and Dotson had. So, it was just a trade that seemed to make a lot of sense at the time.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you were full of keepers anyway. City Pines was so full of keepers anyway, so you need to kind of consolidate that.
Okay. So yeah, let's just speed run till the keeper and cut deadline, and we can you know,
Yeah,
take
sounds
up
good.
the rest of what happened after, and maybe even look at some waivers on a different show in the future.
Yeah.
So next would be the Kelsey trade. What did you guys think?
Getting Kelsey is huge. He hasn't been what he can be yet this year. But there's no reason to believe that he's not going to be the tight end one with a bullet, not going to perform like a low end wide receiver one, and that just makes a huge difference on your roster, whether you're starting him, getting ready for the playoffs, making a title run, or whether you're making a deadline deal. That piece is extremely valuable, and I think it was a good move to acquire it.
Yeah, I think there was a probably decent chance that Kelsey would have just gone for cheaper in the auction draft. Um, it was at least a pretty decent possibility, but locking him up before the auction draft really kind of lets you plan out exactly where you want to spend your money. You don't have to, you know, say, okay, like let's try to get Kelsey, and then like stuff happens during the draft, and then you're left scrambling trying to figure out, what you're pivoting to. Like, so that part I think was really valuable to us, and I think in terms of trade value, like if he's healthy at the deadline, if we're not contending, I think this is a pretty unique asset, right? Like you might be able to go multiple places to get a QB1 or a running back one or a wide receiver one, but you know, Kelsey and maybe a couple other tight ends are really the only guys that people feel comfortable, really comfortable or confident starting every week. So, um, yeah, we got this idea that should we like try to trade for Kelsey because we knew that probably most teams wouldn't view him as a keeper, so they wouldn't really be thinking of like, trading for him. And I think for Yonkers, they had a extra raise that would have hit Kelsey if they kept Kelsey. So, I think it would have been even more expensive for them. So it probably wasn't on their radar at all. So like this was probably just a throwaway for them. Just because it would have been like 80 something bucks to keep him from Yonkers' point of view, I think. So yeah, I mean, love the Metcalf Geno stack, but you know, I this was definitely part of our strategy, and you know, we'll see how it plays out, but we were pretty comfortable making that trade.
Yeah, yep. Agree with all that. I think real really interesting strategy. I think a few teams had this idea of just like let's just lock something down,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
go into the draft with certainty
Yeah.
or go into the auction with certainty and just know who our team is and we're not that excited about the people you can bid on and we'll just
Yeah. Yeah. I
have
think
our top figured out and then just pick our kind of like long shot cheaper guys to
right.
to
This is the Josh Allen idea too. Like, you know, LIC could have played it out and seen what kind of deal they could get on, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson if they hit, auction. But having the certainty going into the draft, I think, is comforting. And like, let's say like you write down 70 bucks for Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, and then the auction goes in a way where they both go for 80, and all of a sudden that amount of money that you have budgeted for them, maybe the running back or wide receivers you like have already gotten nominated, and like now you're like, okay, like I don't really have a guy that I know where to go with this money. So I think especially for quarterback and tight end, those are I think two easy positions to have that kind of mentality where you just kind of know that it's probably a slight over market price or around market price value, but just having the that like position just locked down, I think offers a lot of I guess strategic value to going into the rest of the auction draft because you just don't have to worry about moving parts in that sense. And
yeah
then
very
yeah,
cool.
I mean if nothing else, I think this is probably maybe the biggest trade of the off
Yeah,
season,
definitely
and
Yeah.
most interesting.
and it
Yeah, for
was it
sure
was
most interesting.
made right before I think the deadline. So yeah, I mean, what did you guys think?
Yeah, I'll recap super quick. So this was GK gets Tony Pollard. That was the biggest piece here. Virginia gets two fab from Orange County, three fab from GK, and a second round pick from GK for next year. And Orange County gets Pacheco from GK, who I think is on like $9 or
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yep.
Pickens, who's also on like $9 from Virginia, and a second round pick from also from GK.
Yeah, the pick that we got in the Kelsey trade, we just redirected
Right,
it right
right.
away. So that's a Yonkers
Uh,
pick technically, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I thought this was great. I thought this was really nice for GK. I thought getting Pollard just for kind of like a little bit of draft, a couple of the 2 seconds. I mean, not nothing, but 2 seconds and
Mm-hmm.
Pacheco to put into Pollard, who's like legitimately probably a top five
Mm-hmm.
running back going into the season, and now has been probably even better now with the injuries and
Yeah.
everything. who's really you could have for 3 years potentially
Mm-hmm.
here, maybe even 4 with a franchise tag or something like that. That's really a nice asset
Mm-hmm.
to have. Obviously, running backs, who knows? You can't really count on them for 4 years, but
Yeah, I'm sure the
value
Cowboys will
value might
mix
be
it up.
there.
Yeah. Pollard is
Yeah,
26 already. He is actually a little bit older
right,
than what
older than
people
you
think.
think. Yeah,
So 4 years is probably not an option. And,
right.
28 could be the age that, a running back ages out. So it's definitely very possible, but also running backs in general are kind of short
Right, but
lived.
potentially very nice value for the
Right,
next few
right.
years.
Yep, yep.
In exchange for Pacheco, who I think is a good, Pacheco at 9 is obviously keep value as a keeper.
Hmm.
Um, I don't these Chiefs running backs. It's like the Chiefs receivers.
Yeah, yeah.
Just you don't know with these guys. It's a crapshoot. Yeah, in the second. So I don't know. I really like it for GK. I like it for Orange County. I think they had to get some people. Like they just needed people. It's a little like what New England was doing before. Like if you don't want to go have open keeper spots
Hmm.
going into the season, and I think they pick some people who have a little bit of a potentially nicer value in a couple years, maybe.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's a little bit. I'm also thinking a little bit on this of like what we talked about before. That is Pollard worth more in November,
Hmm.
than he was
Right.
now. Something
Definitely. I
interesting
mean,
to think
yeah, Pollard is a lot cheaper than Josh Allen, so I think the argument would hold a lot more for this.
about. Hmm.
He would probably have keeper value as well. So like you could trade a current year stud with keeper value for potentially your pick of the litter if he has stayed healthy and performed. But again, running backs can get hurt, and I also do see the benefit of like just spreading it wide right now while you do have guys that you like. I personally do like Pickens a lot. I think talent wise, like he can definitely be somebody that is a wide receiver one in his prime if things go right. So yeah, I mean like I do think he probably could have asked for more for Pollard, like if he had a complete like I guess understanding of exactly what assets he can like pick and choose from, and it wasn't so late in the off season. But I also do think Pacheco and Pickens are definitely they're kind of like two dimes for a quarter, but while that seems like obviously like the wrong move, I do get that like both of the dimes could turn into like something bigger. So like for him, I guess spreading it out a little bit wider wasn't the worst idea. But I mean, from our point of view, we were obviously really happy to make this trade happen. Uh, we weren't sure we were going to be able to get Pickens to make this trade happen because we didn't have a comparable piece that OC wanted a piece that was a young wide receiver, like on the verge of a breakout, and there were very few guys that fit that um, description, and I think we did try to make it happen with some other guy first, and then we went to him and said like, oh, like what do you think of Pickens? And he was like, oh yeah, like Pickens is pretty good too. So there were actually two iterations. I forgot who the guy was, but we were trying to trade for a different wide receiver first and to package with Pacheco and the pick. Um, but luckily getting Pickens involved was enough to get it done. So, we were pretty happy with the deal.
Yep. And then I think Virginia's standpoint, I don't know. We talked about this I think a lot in the Discord when it happened, but like
Hmm.
just was hard if you were full up on keepers on your team. People just weren't looking for them for keepers that
Yep,
much for
yep.
these sort of like good but not great
Yeah. It
keepers.
turned out it was better to go early if you were trying to move
Mm-hmm.
some of those
Mm-hmm.
types of keepers where it's not like clear value. Like, some people might have
Mm-hmm.
argued uh Pickens in the auction might have just gone for around what he was kept for, right? So like
Yeah.
in terms of that, like if you went earlier, I think you had a better chance of getting like more substantial pieces. But leaving it this late, I think Virginia was trying to decide till the end, like which of their, I think, last three keepers, Waller, Cook, and Pickens, which one they wanted to throw back. And at this point, when they decided, like, the market just wasn't really there. But, a second round pick and five fab, doesn't sound bad for a guy that keeper value wise, like, didn't probably interest Virginia as much as the other two guys they obviously ended up sticking with. So, timing wise, I think they could have picked a better time, but in the context of them trying to like figure it out for themselves what they wanted, um, I don't think it was a bad trade. I think they might regret it if, Waller continues to, struggle, or, if Cook never hits a consistent role with Buffalo and Pickens does turn into a really good wide receiver, then they might regret that. But like that's a decision that they'll regret internally because they were kind of deciding between three and just traded off the guy that didn't make the cut as much, more so than like, oh, like we, or like I could have gotten more for this guy. Like at the point where they decided they weren't keeping Pickens out of the three, I think this is pretty much as good as what they could have hoped for back. So I didn't hate it for them either.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I just think. I don't know. At that time, I was also trying to offload some of these kind of middle guys because I had too many keepers and just like I couldn't really get much. So I don't hate it. It feels not great for a guy. I think Pickens is such a highlight guy. Like it's if he does turn out good, it's
Mm-hmm.
the kind of guy you love having on your team. Like
Right. Yeah, and it's gonna have
good,
a lot of
consistent.
trade value if
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Do we think George Pickens is good?
I
How
think
good
he's
is
good.
he?
I mean, he's got a great highlight reel. Got a,
Yeah,
He does. He
exactly,
does.
exactly. Yeah.
do you think he's gonna? I don't know. Yeah, is he gonna be a consistent, gets you 12 points every game type of guy? Probably not this
Okay, so
year.
let me ask you a
Probably not
question.
next year.
How good does George Pickens have to be for Orange County to feel good about this deal?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this looks real. I thought from
Yeah,
jump that this looked bad for them.
yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that Pollard would have been worth. Like, I think if this is all you could get for Pollard preseason, I think probably hold
Keep him.
and see.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. He's a top five running back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I
Yeah, I don't
I I
disagree with
didn't
that.
think Pickens would the wide receiver we were trying to acquire to package with, I'm pretty sure was a better wide receiver than Pickens. So once that once we couldn't acquire that wide receiver, we kind of just asked around, uh, looking at rosters, and we were like, oh, what do you think of like this guy? What do you think of this guy? And we were pretty surprised that Oakland, or Duo, rated Pickens high enough to think that that was like enough of a supporting piece. So definitely, yeah. I mean, definitely, we didn't think it would get done with that. But yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe Pickens just is not going to be that kind of talent. But the highlight reel is kind of interesting. I could see why someone falls in love with that. Um, I mean, he did have 800 yards and five touchdowns last year. In his rookie year.
With
Uh,
really shaky quarterback play.
yeah, so I mean, I don't think like, you know,
The Pickett type train was at its full speed at that point in time.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, but that's fair. I mean, I don't disagree. On paper, I think value wise, like we were pretty shocked that
Yeah.
Pickens was
Yeah,
like enough of the
my
supporting
takeaway
piece.
here is I just have to. I'm reaching out to Duho tomorrow to try to make a trade with him because clearly we have vastly different valuations of the players in fantasy.
I love it. I love it.
Love that. Yeah, I think GK is the winner, hands down winner of this trade. I think where you rank the other two is a little more debatable.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. We were definitely the most anxious to turn in the paperwork on this one for sure. So yeah, I don't disagree. Um,
Biggest trade la is the one at the end
yeah,
for Herbert for that.
it's true. Yeah,
Yep.
snuck it in right at
Yep.
the end.
Yep. Yep.
you want to talk about how the negotiations
Yeah,
happened?
these were cutthroat negotiations with this.
What was the?
I think I offered Herbert to at least 7 different people because
Yeah,
I really wanted to keep him, and I just was like, I have 5 guys, and I
yeah.
can't justify
Uh-huh.
keeping him, and I really wanted to, and then he turns out to just suck, and that offense just sucks so
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. What did you start out looking like? What was the opening?
It was how much fab, and I said 5, and he said 2, and then we did 3.
Okay, quick and painless, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did think he had slight keeper value. Definitely not the sexiest because it is the Bears, offense. Although a lot of people were pretty high on the Bears offense coming in, so I guess that's a little bit tinted with hindsight. But yeah, I guess Herbert is just kind of like, not a guy that people are super excited about in either case. So those guys, like, even if they are pretty good keepers, like value wise, like in auction, let's say, like, he would have gone for like, more than what he was kept for. I also do see why, like, he's very much a, take it or leave it type of guy. It's like, yeah, if I have him, that's great, but like if you're gonna like, hold out for a lot for him, like I'm also not gonna lose any sleep about not being able to, acquire him. So that's probably how that shook out. I don't think either team really regrets it too much because in the end, it's only 3 fab for New England, and Madison just couldn't fit them in anyway. So it's a whatever kind of trade to
Yeah.
just finish the off season and feel like you kind of maximize your assets on both sides. So yeah, I mean, not the most consequential trade, but just a sign of, like, I guess everybody trying to maximize what they could squeeze out of what they have asset wise, even till the last hours of the keeper deadline. So that's probably what we saw here.
Yep,
Okay.
that's it.
So yeah, I mean the game is in progress, so let's just pause I guess the show at this point, and maybe we could get back together, run through some of the stuff that happened after, and maybe even look at waivers next time. I think this was a fun discussion about honestly, the off-season trades were pretty bonkers, and they probably did deserve to be highlighted in this manner. So, it was good to talk about that. Thanks for coming on, guys. You guys have anything to say? Mike
Good show. Thanks for having me.
and Alex?
Yeah, great show. Yeah, really great. I think you're spared from your weird Van Jefferson trade, but
Thank you.
we will make
Yeah,
sure to
we'll
get
go
into
over
that
that
next
next time. Yeah.
time.
I will say, you questioned my Browns pickup, but the defense seems
That's a good point. That's a good point.
pretty.
That's a good
I
point.
think
It's looking good.
we're 1-1 on
It's looking good.
puzzling
Brown stuff.
transactions. Okay, yeah.
Browns
I
are
mean,
looking
thanks for
good.
coming on. I think it's really great that we're hearing more and more voices, and uh, yeah. That's it for today. Peace.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Talk to you later.